And hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Bare Bones Talk. We are going to be talking about a lot of stuff tonight, so strap in because there's a lot to cover. Um, so let's dive right in here with talking about what we're going to cover tonight. First, we're going to be taking a look at an online values assessment, which is supposed to tell you where you fall on the political stream and spectrum. So, we're going to see how accurately that reflects things, and I'm going to take the test with you people here online to watch. So that ought to be pretty cool. After that, we're going to be talking about some of the things going through the news today, and reacting to some videos, and otherwise trying to have a good time dealing with the sheer amount of unbridled crazy that exists on the internet. So that is our plan for the evening. How you like them apples? All right, well, let's dig into it. 8 Values seeks to determine what your leanings are by asking you questions, and we're going to dig into it. I think there's something like, it says 70 questions, so this ought to be interesting. Here we go. Okay, you'll be presented with a series of statements. For each one, click the button with your opinion on it. I think we can safely say we got that. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. Okay. I am going to say that I will agree a little bit. Actually, no, I'm going to disagree with that a little bit because I think an oppressive government is, in the long run, more dangerous. So we'll say disagree. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. I strongly agree with that. Because left to its own devices, any for-profit economy, any capitalist economy, is going to steamroll the end users, the people, the economics, the country, the everything in pursuit of the almighty buck. The freer the markets, the freer the people. False. Again, completely unregulated markets tend to leave the control of everything in the hands of monopolies, so we're going to say that I disagree with that. It is better to maintain a balanced budget than to ensure welfare for all citizens. No. We don't normally balance a budget anyway, but if we're not going to balance it, I would say we should take care of people, and if I have to choose between kids starving to death and balancing the budget, I will choose feeding the kids. Publicly funded research is more beneficial to the people than leaving it to the market. I agree with that. Virtually all the really big important stuff we've had happen technologically in the last 50 to 100 years has come from public stuff. The internet we're talking on came out of DARPA, which is a government-funded project. And so I'm going to have to strongly agree with that.
Let's go.
Bella?
Let's go. Out.
You've been...
Out. No.
International trade is beneficial. I'll agree with that a bit because we want to be able to export things to other countries, and we want to be able to import goods and resources that we can't get here in our own country. So I think that could be useful. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. I agree with that. I think you should try to do the best you can, and I think that people should get the necessities of life as part of their participation in the process. If you give a lot more than you're putting into it, then you get rewarded a bit more, and that's fine. But I don't think anybody should be left starving and unhappy because they have, not been viewed as valuable enough by a capitalist system. It would be best if social programs were abolished in favor of private charity. Hell no. Hell no. Okay, so here's the thing. Anytime a private charity steps in and has to provide for somebody, or anytime somebody has to do a GoFundMe and do, charitable giving request, it means the system has failed and there are people in need who should not be in need. Private charity is no better for this than private industry. We need, one of the functions of government is supposed to be to take care of the people, and if it's not, if there is a need for private charity, the system needs to be beefed up so that the private charity is no longer necessary. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. Of course they should. The more money you have, the more you have benefited from the system and the economy and the ability to live within and work within the nation that we are part of here. And as such, you owe more back to it. Okay, that's not even a hard concept. If you're a billionaire, it's not because you did all the work yourself. It's because you were fortunate enough to live within an economic system and in a nation where that was even possible, where the support infrastructure was there to allow you to amass that kind of wealth. So, yeah, taxation on the rich is obviously the thing to go. Inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth? No. Um, the whole reason that we have an inheritance tax in this country is because the people who founded it had seen for all of economic recorded history that inheritance being passed down from one generation to the next simply seems to or serves to concentrate wealth into the hands of the few at the expense of the economy as a whole, and the money that is being hoarded never goes back into general circulation. So it is directly harmful to the economy to allow the inheritance of massive piles of wealth. Because that basically, within the people who are in favor of that say, oh, everybody should be a self-made man. Well, okay, don't inherit that money. Prove to us that you can actually do that stuff on your own. But they don't want to do that. They want to inherit it. So it's just it's another function of economics that allows the rich to stay rich without actually putting forth any effort or creating anything valuable. So no, inheritance is not a legitimate form of wealth. Public utilities like roads and electricity should be publicly owned. Absolutely, they should be a public asset. Usable by all. If you have to pay for them with taxes, that's fine. If you have to pay for them with, some kind of shared expense among the public, fine. But they ought to be absolutely usable by everybody. Period. End of story. And should not be for-profit things. Roads should not be for-profit. Electricity should not be for-profit, because electricity can and often is the difference between like freezing to death and not freezing to death. So yes, should be publicly owned. Excessive government intervention is a threat to the economy? No. Again, the function of the government is to regulate the economy. The only excessive thing we're seeing in our economy is deregulation of it, meaning getting the government out of the economy, and that has led to the economy being in the toilet. So, it should be pretty obvious to everybody that we need to monitor the economy and regulate it so it actually works for the entire country, not just for the people that are already super rich. Those with greater ability should should receive better health care? No. Healthcare should just be something everybody gets. Whatever you're sick with, you need to get it treated. Fine, it gets treated. Done. End of story. There shouldn't be some kind of qualifier that says you don't deserve healthcare or you deserve more healthcare. Quality education is a right of all people. Yes, unless you want to live in a country full of idiots. Education should be the right of everybody, and it should be embraced by everybody. Anyone who says differently is wrong. Period. End of story. The entire reason that we are not hunter-gatherers beating each other over the head with clubs for, the ability to pull the berries off of a bush is because we have education that allows us to build on the foundations of human knowledge and expand it and develop technology, etc. So, yes, it should be the right of all people. Anybody who says different is an elitist dirtbag. The means of production should belong to the workers who use them. I agree with that to an extent. I do think that if somebody invents a means of production, that they should be the ones who own the rights to it, etc. But I do believe that if let's say you invent a process that lets you make a better widget, whatever that thing is, that if you have to hire a factory full of people to produce it, otherwise your idea is useless, then yeah, the people who are the ones facilitating your ability to actually get that idea of yours to the market should be, they should receive part of the benefit of that, because you're not doing everything yourself. You came up with an idea, fantastic. You deserve credit for it. You deserve compensation for it. You do not deserve to ignore the people that actually let your idea be something more than just a concept you wrote down that does nothing and gets thrown in the trash. The United Nations should be abolished. No. Anybody who thinks that should be is an idiot. We need to have, the countries of the world not going to war with each other. Best way to facilitate that is to have people talk instead of shoot things. Military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. In my entire lifetime, I have never seen any outside national force invade the United States. There has, as far as I can tell, not in like the last 100 years, not since like the American Civil War, if I am correct, has there been any military need for the United States military to do anything that actually protects the United States. When we send troops overseas, that is not protecting ourselves, that is attacking other people. And if you don't understand that distinction, you really need to rethink it. If we are attacking people, we are the aggressors. We are the invaders. We are not defending anything. So military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. No. I support regional unions such as the European Union. I think that's okay. I don't have I don't think that they're absolutely necessary or absolutely bad. But I do think that if the nations of an area want to come together for mutual benefit economically or whatever, that's just fine. It's important to maintain our national sovereignty. Sure. I mean, we don't want to dissolve all the nations of the world. A united world government would be beneficial to mankind. I'm going to say I disagree with that because I think one of the reasons that we have cultures that continue to exist is because they have different nations that that develop and maintain and embrace these different cultures. So I don't think we need a one world government, especially since if that one world government were to become corrupt, there would be no other force to turn to for help. It is more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. Yes. If you don't get into wars, you don't need massive armies. And, Derp, welcome. This is not the entirety of politics. This is just an interesting thing that I heard about, which is a quiz to sort of give you an idea of where you stand on the political spectrum. And I'm just doing it in front of everybody so you all can see how this quiz works. It may be a completely useless quiz. It's just amusing. My opinion is peace is better than war. If you can maintain peace, it's better than being the biggest kid on the block. Wars do not need to be justified to other countries. That is garbage. If you can't demonstrate a realistic and ethical and moral reason for armed conflict, you shouldn't be in it. So I'm strongly disagreeing that wars do not need to be justifiable to other countries. Military spending is a waste of money. I agree with that for the most part. And I'm going to justify that and explain that and back that up with a little more information. I'm talking about specifically the United States. We enjoy the benefit of having massive oceans between us and just about any other country in the world. We only have two bordering countries, really. We have Canada and Mexico. So the idea that any other nation is ever going to be able to successfully mass troops on our borders and invade us and take our land is zero. And the fact of the matter is that we have a nuclear arsenal. Using it would be devastating and harmful and stupid. But as long as we have it, nobody in the world would be dumb enough to try to build a giant army up on our borders and march in, because we could literally nuke them where they were assembling on the other side of the border. They're not going to risk that. The amount of money we spend on the military is insane. It's ludicrous, and it's devastating to the economy, because every dollar spent on that stuff is money that is not being spent to feed and clothe and educate our own citizens. So yeah, military spending is enormously wasteful. I'm going to go with agree on that. International aid is a waste of money. No, it's not a bad idea to help your neighbors out. I don't think we should, necessarily say that we should fix every other country and leave our own in the toilet. But if there is an opportunity to be helpful and deliver humanitarian aid and such, I think that that's a useful thing. My nation is great. It's been better, but I still think the United States has a lot going for it. Research should be conducted on an international scale. I agree. The brains of this world are not concentrated in any one country. I think that research that's done globally stands a much better chance of accomplishing great things. Government should be accountable to the international community. I would tend to agree with that. I think that, if a country decides to turn tyrannical and it starts building up armies to invade its neighbors and start taking their territory and whatever, that the rest of the world should be able to say, no, you're not doing that. And, they should be held accountable for those aggressive, militarist, expansionist kinds of things. Even when protecting an authoritarian protesting an authoritarian government, violence is not acceptable. No, all you have to do is see what's going on in China with the protesters that are standing up against the Chinese government. Sometimes if you're being killed, you have to be willing to defend yourself. I think that nonviolent protests are always the best option if they are feasible. But if, the thing you're protesting against is so devastating and deadly that you have to fight back, then, yeah, violence is acceptable. I mean, the fact of the matter is no American should think differently, because this country only exists because we protested violently against an oppressive government that was, ruining us here in the colonies. So I would actually say it's actually un-American to think that it's wrong to resist authoritarian, tyrannical rule, with violence. So violence is unacceptable. Disagree. My religious values should be spread as much as possible. I don't have a religion, so I have to go with neutral on that, I would imagine. Our nation's values should be spread as far as possible. No, I'm not in favor of forcing our views on other countries, so I'm going to disagree with that. It is very important to maintain law and order. I agree that law and order are important. The question that this item is not asking is how you would maintain it, but I'll go with the light agree. The general populace makes poor decisions, absolutely. Most people are dumb, most people are uneducated, most people act against their own best interest. All you have to do is look at how many people voted Republican to know that a huge number of people in this country make really bad decisions. Victimless crimes such as drug use should not be crimes at all. I agree, if there's no victim, there shouldn't be a crime. I don't see how that's a hard concept to understand. If there's no victim, nobody's been wronged, so who cares? The sacrifice of some civil liberties is necessary to protect us from acts of terrorism. Hell no. There's nothing terrorists have ever done to this country that is of greater harm than stripping us of our fundamental rights as citizens of this country. The 9/11 attacks were brutal and horrible, but they didn't curtail our freedoms. Somebody strapping a bomb to their chest and blowing up a building, or somebody flying an airplane into a building or whatever, those cannot undo what the Constitution says. They cannot change the Bill of Rights or the amendments or any of that stuff. They can just do physical damage. But in the end, those terrorists did not do anything to hurt America. As a nation, they killed a lot of people, which is hurtful and awful. But the actual curtailing of rights that happened afterwards was entirely a self-inflicted injury by our own politicians. So, no, I don't think we should restrict our civil liberties to protect ourselves from terrorism, because I don't even think that there's a way to restrict civil liberties in a way that would have any impact on it at all. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. Nope. The very existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. No, come on. The only reason we have rights in this country is because we have a state-guaranteed set of them. The stuff that we consider to be rights, if we were all living as cavemen, they wouldn't be rights at all. They'd be a pipe dream. Regardless of political opinions, it is important to side with your country. No, if your country is doing something horrible and evil and wrong, you should be able to say, that's horrible and evil and wrong. You shouldn't feel compelled to say, I'm going to back my country even though they're doing horrific crap. All authority should be questioned, yes. Authority is something that is often necessary, but you should be absolutely sure that whatever authority you're submitting to is legitimate and ethical and moral and needed before you submit to it. A hierarchical state is best. I'm not sure what they're trying to say there. It's kind of an obscure question. But on general principles, since I believe in equality, I'm going to say hierarchical states are not the best. It is important that the government follows the majority opinion even if it is wrong. How can you even think that yes would be an okay to answer way to answer that? The stronger the leadership, the better. No, we do not need Stalin-esque strongmen at the helm here. What we need is a strong constitution and strong protections for the public, not a strong individual thumping their chest and waving their fist and smacking the table with their shoe. Democracy is more than a decision-making process. Agree. Environmental regulations are essential. Yes, with no environment, we have no humans, so yeah, I would call that essential. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. That is a question that's impossible to give a decent answer to, because, at least not on this scale, because it's not specific. Better could mean a whole lot of things. Like if better means can industries and factories be streamlined, then yes. If it means are we going to lose a lot of jobs, then no, it's not a better world. So there's no definitive answer to that. But that being said, since one of the things people were talking about earlier was anti-vax stuff, and we should all be aware that the world is vastly better off not having a huge outbreak of polio every day, and that sort of thing, no smallpox, no polio, etc., that science and technology are probably better than not having it. So I'll go with the light agree. Children should be educated in religious or traditional values. Nope. A family can teach their kid whatever they want, but there's no should do it. It's not something that should be considered a necessity or even necessarily positive. It should be possible, but it's not something that we should categorize as they should all be educated in these values. What people should be educated in is things like math and science and language and critical thinking, so they can actually make good decisions. Know how to gather information and make good decisions. Traditions are of no value on their own. Totally agree. A tradition that's just there to be followed for no apparent reason is stupid. Um, a tradition that has some type of value can be a good thing, but the value of a tradition comes from what it represents, what it does for the public that practices it, etc., not from the tradition itself. So I'm going to say yes, I agree that they're of no value on their own. Religion should play a role in government, not a frickin' no. Nope, 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 nope. Churches should be taxed the same way as other institutions, yes. I don't see anything about churches that should make them exempt from tax, especially since a huge number of them blatantly violate the rules that we use to determine what is or is not a tax exempt organization. So screw them, pay your taxes if you're not going to follow the law. Climate change is currently one of the greatest threats to our way of life. Of course it is. If the world heats up and 90% of the people on it die, that's a big threat to the way of life. It's important that we work as a united world to combat climate change, yes, because the entire world will suffer from it. Society was better many years ago than it is now. I disagree. I think that we are better off in most regards now than we were 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago. We don't all die at 25 because of our teeth rotting out of our heads and infections spreading throughout our entire body and dying of sepsis. So I'm going to say it was not better many years ago than it is now, but I'm going to say disagree on the lighter side because I'm sure if you were to dig deep, you'd find something that was good in the past that we don't do today. So I can't say it as an absolute thing. It is important that we maintain the traditions of our past. Not really. I mean, traditions should only be maintained if they're relevant and useful. Tradition for tradition's sake is not, it's nothing. It carries no importance of its own. Kind of builds off that prior question. So disagree. It is important that we think in the long term beyond our lifespans. Of course it is. I mean, the planet's supposed to be around another 4.5 to 5 billion years before the sun explodes and kills everything on it. You got to be kind of a selfish jerk to not want to think about what might happen after you're gone. Reason is more important than maintaining our culture. I would agree with that to a degree. I think that, culture has its own value if it is, thoughtful and helpful and positive. But being in line with reality, is more important. So I'm going to go with the mild degree. Drug use should be legalized or decriminalized. I agree. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, criminal offenses should be reserved for things like assault and murder and violent crime and things like that, not smoking a joint in your house. There's no difference in my mind between that and smoking a cigarette, and we don't send people to prison, for life for 3 strikes getting caught with a cigarette in their mouth. So yeah, I'm gonna strongly agree with that. Same-sex marriage should be legal. Yes, yes, yes. Who gives a shit if if you're not gay, don't marry somebody of the same gender. Who cares? It's marriage. It's not your marriage. Get over it. No cultures are superior to others. I agree to an extent that most cultures are just as good or bad as any other. There are probably some that really suck. But by and large, I don't think that cultures generally can be said to be superior to others. And I don't know what every culture in the world is. So that's a question I'm going to have to go neutral because I don't really have a frame of reference for that. Sex outside marriage is immoral. No. Gee, 500-year-old outdated Moors, who cares? You're not married, you want to have consensual sex with somebody, bang away, who cares? If we accept migrants at all, it's important that they assimilate into our culture. I'm going to say mildly agree because I think we should accept immigrants. But I do think that when you move to a new country, that it's important to try to assimilate into their culture. I don't want to be a jerk here, but like if I move to Italy because I have a history of generations ago family coming from there, I'd want to learn to speak Italian. So just because I'd be living in a country where that language is spoken, I'd want to understand Italian culture so I could live comfortably within it and not be the oddball who offends everybody with everything I do because I don't understand what that country is about. So I think that there is some importance to that, but it's not, it's not like, oh my God, you don't speak our language, you should go back where you came from, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to use the mild degree. Abortion should be prohibited in most or all cases. No. Women's bodies are own. If you don't like it, suck it. Gun ownership should be prohibited for those without a valid reason. I agree mildly. I think valid reason can include, target shooting, hunting, personal defense, etc. If you have a job where you have to handle money and your store's likely to get robbed, there are a lot of things that are, legitimate reasons. But wanting to have like 1,000 guns in your house because you're stockpiling for Armageddon, probably not a valid reason to have 1,000 guns. I'm just saying. So I think there's got to be some common sense delineator where we say these are, normal and acceptable reasons for having guns, and these other things are not, and that if somebody wants them for purposes that are outside the norm, like again stockpiling for doomsday or whatever, that's probably dangerous and should be prohibited. So I'm going to go with the mild agree. I don't think all guns should be banned. I don't think we should tell people they can't have guns as a blanket thing. But I do think we need to be a little smarter about how we handle guns in this country, because something's not right here, when we have this many gun-related injuries and deaths. I support single-payer universal health care. If I could click strongly agree 50 times, I would. Prostitution should be illegal. No, I think that women who want to do it for their own uses should be able to do it. I don't want to go to a prostitute, but I'm not a woman. I'm not a sex worker. I think that the very fact we make prostitution illegal is what leads to women having pimps that beat them up and enslave them with drugs and traffic them and whatever. I think that as long as, women wanted to be prostitutes, if they were willing to have some kind of legal framework around it, like getting STD tested once every 2 weeks and health checks and blah, 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 that, as long as they're engaging in it safely, I don't care. I don't think it should be against the law. I don't think women should go to jail for it. I think that, if you're a dude and you go to a prostitute, and you're married and you're sleeping with hookers and your wife doesn't know and whatever, you're an asshole and you probably deserve to get divorced. But I don't think you should end up in prison for 10 years for that. You might deserve to have an imprint of your wife's fist in your face, but other than that, so no, prostitution should not be illegal. Maintaining family values is essential. That's one that is another one that's hard to answer, because it's not really saying what family values are. In this country, you have Christian organizations that call themselves things like family values, but what they really are is anti-gay and anti-abortion and anti-women. So it's a tough thing there. I'm going to have to go with neutral on that. To chase progress at all costs is dangerous. Agree. A lot of the stuff that we have developed in the pursuit of progress has been harmful to us. I think that the pursuit of new technologies, new inventions, new everything should be tempered with the wisdom to do what you heard in Jurassic Park. You don't get so concerned with whether you could that you forget to ask if you should, So I'm going to say I'm going to agree with that. Not the heavy agree, but the light agree. Genetic modification is a force for good, even on humans. I don't know enough about it to be sure. I'm inclined to say that it's fine as long as it's done ethically, but again, I would have to do more research to find out. We should open our borders to immigration. Our borders already are open to immigration. You just have to go through proper channels or seek asylum. I don't see what the point of this question is, except to try to find out, if somebody is a closed border racist or an open border moron who doesn't think that any kind of control over, how people seek citizenship is possible. So I'm going to have to go with neutral on that, because this seems like a gotcha question. Government should be as concerned about foreigners as they are about their own citizens. No. The purpose of each country's government should be to be concerned about its own citizens first and foremost. And you can be concerned about other countries' citizens too, but your own country's citizens should take precedence. All people, regardless of factors like culture or sexuality, should be treated equally. I'm going to have to go with agree on that. If you think that gay people deserve to be treated differently because they're gay or whatever, then I think there's something wrong with you. So I'm going to go with agree on that. Too bad there's no medium agree, because again, we talked about before, I don't know what every culture in the world is like, so I feel like this is another loaded question. But I'm going to go with strongly agree on it. It is important that we further my group's goals above all others. No, anybody who thinks that is probably narcissistic. So this is the last question. Let's see how we do. Okay. So, economics. I lean more towards socialism by a wide margin than I do toward capitalism. I'm big on equality. So I'm also more inclined to peace than war. I am more inclined to liberal than conservative, and I am very progressive. So, libertarian socialism, I would disagree with that only in the idea that I am more of a democratic socialist than a libertarian socialist. I am not one of these people who screams all taxation is theft and whatever, so I'm not sure I would call myself libertarian. But I would say these different axes seem pretty accurate for me. So if anybody wants to actually try this for themselves, you can just Google 8 values and you will get this page. It's kind of a fascinating thing to go through the questions. I don't know how many people we actually have here at the moment, but if anybody wants to speak up and let me know, that they're here and what they think of that quiz, then that would be cool. Otherwise, we're going to get into the next one of the subjects, which is going to be a whole diatribe about the current impeachment and Trump situation. So if you have anything to say before we go down that rabbit hole, now's the time. I'll give you a few seconds here while I drink a little bit more of my iced tea, because I've been talking for quite a while straight here. Also, unrelated to politics, iced tea is delicious. It's delicious. Okay, so let's talk Trump. I've been trying so hard to avoid going too far into the impeachment thing on the politics stream, not because it's not happening, but because virtually everybody's talking about it in some way, shape, or form, or even like just rebroadcasting C-SPAN coverage of it or whatever. But I saw some stuff today that just was so frickin' unreal that I had to say something about it. Well, there's two things. One I saw last night and one I saw today. Last night, for a few minutes, I was watching some of the debate over the articles of impeachment and the amendments to them, and I have never seen something as awful as that in American politics before. The Republicans who were testifying and commenting and speaking were so blatantly lying and distracting and misleading and doing everything they could to protect, to polish the political turd that is Donald Trump. It was unbelievable. And if these people are the face of the Republican, political reality, then they are so vile and so evil and so ready to destroy the rule of law in favor of their own partisan bullshit that we are teetering on the edge of the United States being destroyed. And then I saw some stuff today that reinforced that whole problem. And I'm going to show you. I think I have a tab with it here somewhere. Okay. Is this the one? This is the one. Okay. Actually, no, this is it. So, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear Donald Trump's case about whether or not he can ignore the subpoenas that Congress has put before him, asking for things like bank records and such. And that is horrifying for a couple of reasons. The first is, the main reason why American presidential candidates disclose their tax information is because it's important for the sanctity of the office of the President of the United States that the American public be able to feel like the person holding that office is not a criminal asshole scumbag ripoff artist. And part of that is demonstrating through disclosure of their financial records that they're not engaged in illegal activities in that arena. Okay? Trump is the first guy in decades to buck that trend, to decide that he's not going to show his stuff. He lied during the campaign saying that he was being audited. He's not. They lied and said that he would disclose his stuff after he got elected. He didn't. But here's what we do know about the guy. We know that he has been destroying virtually every business he touched for his entire life, that he couldn't launch businesses on his own without massive influxes of cash borrowed from his father when he was a younger man. We know that he has run a casino into the ground, and to understand the significance of that, you really have to keep in mind that a casino is a business that preys upon the vices of people and is literally, mathematically certain for the house to always win in the end. it should be essentially impossible for a casino to fail the way his failed. Okay? He is known for having had a university that was such a scam that it got closed down and he owed millions of dollars in damages. He had a fake MLM company that ripped people off and he owed millions of dollars in damages. So this guy is a financial. I mean, I can only use the word criminal here, as far in the sense that the stuff he's done is blatantly immoral and, in a lot of cases has been illegal and resulted in punitive damages against the guy and all this. And so it stands to reason that if, like every other candidate before him who was engaged in this process, he had nothing to hide in his finances, he would have disclosed them simply because it would have benefited him to do so. It would have absolutely helped shore up his image if he could have said, here's everything, the books are open, take a look, there's nothing bad there, you can look through it with a fine-tooth comb, pick it apart, you're not going to find any damaging stuff because I didn't do anything wrong. If you're not willing to do that, the only reason you wouldn't be willing to do that, because if you don't have anything to hide, the advantages to doing that are so enormous that you'd be an idiot not to do it. The only reason you wouldn't is if you know that it would not be to your advantage to do it because there is horrific shit to be discovered in your financial records. And every reasonable person in the country that's not a brain-dead MAGA hat-wearing moron knows that Trump is hiding something. It's just a question of what will the documents reveal. And Congress subpoenaed those documents because his dirty dealings need to be exposed and because, it will give insight into the other criminal acts that he's alleged to be participating in. And he has refused to comply with the subpoenas. And now, this is one of these things that could literally destroy the United States government. And I'll explain why. But there's two aspects to it. One is he's refusing the subpoenas and has gone to court to try to avoid them. And every single court that he's gone to has said, no, you have to comply with the subpoenas, shut up and give him the documents. And he has said that he is going to take it all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court just agreed to hear the case. Because not everything that you put in front of the Supreme Court is something that they're going to actually have a trial over, have a hearing over. They have to agree to have a hearing. Because there's a lot more stuff that people want to put before the Supreme Court than they could ever actually address. But they've agreed to do this. So what you have is a president who is ignoring legal subpoenas, who's been repeatedly told by ever higher and higher and higher courts that he has to comply, and is only pushing it because he knows that he has, by the help of Mitch McConnell stealing a nomination from President Obama, been able to stack the court 5-4 in the favor of the Republicans. And he is hedging and betting everything on the idea that he has packed the court, that the fix is in, that they will say, no, the other courts were wrong, the president doesn't have to obey a subpoena. And he has basically put together a situation that no matter how it turns out, the U.S. government is screwed in different ways. So let's say that he fails, okay? That the Supreme Court says you have to comply with the subpoenas. Whatever horrific crap there is in his financial records is going to come to light, and the shit will hit the proverbial fan. There's just no other way to describe it. It'll be a nightmare, and we will see in clear, provable numbers from the guy's own books huge amounts of criminal shit he has done financially that there's no excuse for, that should land any person in jail, whatever. But the worst possibility is if the court says he does not have to provide information in response to a subpoena. And why is that? It's because of the way the U.S. government is set up. The government of the United States is built around a concept called checks and balances. And for those who have not heard of this, checks and balances mean that we have three branches of government. The legislative, which is the Congress, meaning the House of Representatives and the Senate. We have the executive branch, which is the office of the presidency and the stuff that revolves around him. And we have the Supreme Court. And these three branches are each assigned very specific powers and responsibilities that not only define what they do, but define how they can limit what the other branches are so that no one branch gets out of control. And all three branches are supposed to be what's considered co-equal, meaning that no one branch is more powerful or more influential or better than the others. They are all on equal footing. So when the Congress, which has the legal authority to issue subpoenas to the president, gets told no, the president is literally breaking the law. Like if you were handed a subpoena, if you were served a subpoena, you couldn't just say to the court, go fuck yourself, you're not going to comply. You'd go to jail, okay? But this is exactly what the president is doing. And he's turning to a Supreme Court that he packed with the help of Mitch McConnell to put the fix in order to get him the ability to ignore the law. And that is devastating to the future of the American Republic because it would mean that he has just created a circumstance where the government turned on itself, bit off its own head, and proved that some of the branches are not co-equal with others, and that in a partisan way that people will ignore their responsibilities under the law, their responsibilities to the American people, their responsibilities to their oaths of office, in order to promote their party's agenda with no repercussion. And that's horrific. And here's the thing that's really unbelievable about it. It's not just bad for Democrats if that happens. It's bad for Republicans. It's bad for everybody. Because if that happens, there are two possible outcomes. The first one of which is you set that standard where the president can do anything without legal repercussion and can never be given a summons, never be given a subpoena. And the next time a Democrat is in the White House, they will have that same protection because the precedent will have been set under Trump, which will mean that the office of the presidency, the executive branch, would be permanently beyond the reach of any legal repercussion for anything. And while the Republicans are snickering to themselves in, stupid glee at the idea that their orange-skinned, weasel-haired guy is going to get that power and stick it to the libs or whatever they say, whatever they think, that's not going to last forever. There will be a Democrat president in the future, and they are going to be so fucking terrified when they see a Democrat get away with the kind of stuff in pursuit of liberal stuff that Trump is getting away with in pursuit of his own personal agenda, that they'll all have heart attacks and keel over frickin' dead, figuratively speaking, So it's not good for Republicans and bad for Democrats. It's bad for everybody because whoever holds that office will effectively have absolute power. It will destroy the American government by making the president essentially a dictator because they'll be able to do anything they want, and you can't subpoena them for anything. You can't put them on, you can't charge them with anything, you can't put them into court for anything. They can ignore the functions of the legal system. The other possible outcome there is that the Republicans get this ruling in their favor, and they use that now essentially unlimited power of the executive branch to make sure that the Democrats never hold any branch of governance again and actually turn the United States into a dictatorship, not one that just functions like one, but an actual Republican dictatorship. And that would be horrifying. And the reason that would be horrifying, again, is that it's not just bad for Democrats, because we now go to the Niemöller effect, which I think I have art from that here. Reverend Niemöller was a guy who supported the Nazis early on in Germany, and then when he realized what a horror they were, he changed his tune and eventually was sent to the camps. And he said this: first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And that's a very, very important bit of historical speech right there. And it bears directly on why a victory in this case for Trump would be bad for Republicans. Because even if they get everything they want, and they get a Republican dictatorship and liberals like me are stepped on, eventually they'll be able to eradicate us. And the problem with an authoritarian government, with a dictatorship, is after it takes out the people, it crushes the people, it exiles the people, it deports the people, it whatever's the people that were in direct opposition to it, like in this case, liberals being opposed to Trump, they still need an enemy for their base to hate. And if you get rid of all the lefties in the United States and everybody who's left as a right-winger, they're going to have to find a way to cause division in the ranks of the right wing, to give the bulk of the right wing a minority of the right wing to hate and vilify, so they can channel that rage. Because if you were to take away all the stuff that the Republican Party says that its supporters should hate and be against and whatever, that's their only motivator. Okay, one of the chief differences between Republicans and Democrats is Democrats are in favor of things, Republicans are against things. Their entire worldview is, I hate this, I hate that, banish this, stop that, put an end to this, don't let people do that. And once you get rid of whatever the this and that is, they need something else to be against for their base to continue supporting them. Because if you were to make a list of everything Republicans currently hate, and then you give them all the power and they get rid of all of it, what then? What do you do then? The Republicans have no positive future goal. All they're about is destroying something that they have told their followers that they're supposed to hate. So once they run out of those, they need to find some new target. That's it. They need a new target. Okay? And that will be someone from their own support, from their own group of supporters, someone from their own side, because there'll be nobody else left. So yeah, the Republicans can sit back as they come for the socialists and the people that believe in unions and the Jews and eventually people of non-white color and non-Christian faiths and whatever else that Republicans tell them they're supposed to hate. But there are only so many of those groups out there. And once they've established their Republican utopia, whatever that might look like, they're going to still need somebody to tell you that they need to get rid of. And when they come for you, Republicans, because you're eventually going to be the one that they hate, there will be nobody left to say that is unjust, that is unfair, and you will have created your own hell. You will have engineered your own downfall. Okay? So you're basically Nemollering yourself to death and you don't even see it. So let's go back to this here. So we've done the 8 values test. We have talked about the Supreme Court and Trump and how what he's doing is devastating and damaging. Let's do some video reactions. I don't know how many people we actually have here right now. Is there anybody actually watching at the moment? Because I would like to get your opinion on the things that we're going to look at here. So I don't know if we actually have a live person or if I'm just holding what amounts to a lecture hall at the moment to an audience of one. But I'm going to continue anyway because the stuff I'm saying is important. People need to understand what the future of their country might be. But the next part is going to take a turn for the personal. So if you have read the panels below the stream screen, you'll know there are a few things about me, one of which is I'm a liberal. Another one of which is I'm an atheist. And one of the things that's difficult as an atheist is that you are constantly bombarded by people telling you how wrong you are for being an atheist and how bad you are and how stupid you are and whatever else, which is incredibly frustrating because that is some serious Dunning-Kruger shit right there, where the person who has no idea what they're talking about is telling someone else that they don't know what they're talking about. And that gets very tiring after a while. And I've seen some videos lately where religious people are telling atheists how dumb we are. And here's the thing. I don't believe in a God. My reasons for it can be discussed another time, but they amount to there's not enough evidence in support of the claim that a God exists to warrant believing in one. But I really wouldn't care if anybody else was religious as long as they didn't try to shovel that stuff onto me. And when they do, I resist. Okay? That's it in a nutshell. And you have these people constantly, telling me how wrong I am and how stupid I am for it. And when you actually pay attention to what they say, the stuff they say is so logically baseless and in a lot of cases so utterly stupid that it blows your mind thinking that anybody could possibly give credence to these arguments. So we're going to look at a video of one such person. Let me see if I can get this. Is that the right one? No. Is this the one I was looking for? Yes, this guy. Okay. So this guy is some type of pastor, and he has this thing on the board behind him, Dumb Things Atheists Say. And I've watched this video a few times, and as far as I can tell, the only dumb things being said are being said by him, and the only dumb points he's making are ones that make him look bad. But let's take a look. So we're going to maximize this, and we're going to play this and stop and comment on it.
San Jose Bible Baptist Church. I want to cover...
Let me restart that so you can hear it. The volume is down.
Hello, this is Pastor Gene Kim of San Jose Bible Baptist Church. I want to cover some really dumb things that atheists will say.
Okay, so here he is assuming that the things atheists are going to say are dumb. The only thing that makes somebody an atheist is not feeling like there's a significant reason to believe in a God. We generally don't chase down religious people to tell them what we think. Generally, the only time that atheists will really get into this stuff is when we are responding to things religious people have said to us directly or about us generally, like this video. So we're already, in the example of this guy being kind of off point here by saying that we're the ones who say dumb things, because we do not chase religious people down to push our opinions on them.
Sometimes some Christians might have a difficulty to witness to an atheist, and they might wonder, man, I don't know.
Okay, and that's an example of religious people being very kind to themselves. When you say witness to, what you're basically saying is corner them and start shoveling your religion at them as hard as you can and hope that it sticks. Witnessing is literally no different than when people come to your door on a Saturday morning with whatever their holy text is or whatever kind of thing they're trying to sell and try to get you on board with their stuff when you're just trying to sleep in on a Saturday or, get a picnic ready or whatever the hell you're doing.
How I can answer their questions, their arguments. They sound very sound.
That's because the arguments that atheists present typically are very logically sound. There are two concepts in the realm of logic. One is validity and one is soundness. An argument is logically valid if it follows a correct logical format, the most basic one of which is called a syllogism, and I won't ask you to spell that, but it goes like this. If A, then B. If B, then C. If A, therefore C. Okay? And the example of that you hear most is all men are mortal. Aristotle was a man. Therefore, Aristotle is mortal. Okay? That is a logically valid argument. A logical proposition is sound if... Well, let me go back to valid for a second. The reason it's important to have a logically valid construct is that if you have a valid logical construct, if the premises are true, the conclusion must also be true. So if all men are mortal, and if Aristotle was a man, it must be the case that Aristotle is mortal. Okay? The conclusion, Aristotle is mortal, must be true if the two premises that lead to it, all men are mortal and Aristotle was a man, are true. A logical argument is sound if the preposition or if the premises are correct. Okay? When atheists talk about this stuff, we usually have logically valid and logically sound arguments to make. And the reason we have those is because we tend to rely on something other than faith. Faith being defined as belief without proof. We tend to stick to what we can prove. We tend to stick to what can be known. So it makes it much easier to have logically valid and logically sound points to make.
Well, in the Word of God, the Bible says that atheism is actually very, very foolish.
And who cares? He says, oh, in the Bible it says atheism is foolish. Yes, it does. In a minute he's going to issue a quote to you from Psalms that says, the fool has said in his heart there is no God. Who gives a shit? If you can't prove the Bible is valid, it doesn't matter what it says, any more than if I produced a book that said Christianity is foolish. It wouldn't make Christianity foolish just because I can produce a book that says so. Okay? For it to be meaningful, for anything in the Bible to be meaningful, it has to be demonstrably true. Just having a verse in a psalm, which is literally a line from a song that says that, does not make it actually correct. J Shift. Some people need religion to continue with life. I don't see why. I know that some people use it as a motivator. They use it for a foundation, but I'm not sure it's necessary for them. I just think it's the thing that they have used, and that it is very important to them, but I'm not sure it's true to say that one thing is necessary. Mostly for those who have recently found God. In order for anybody to find God, there has to be a God for them to find, and then they have to actually be able to demonstrate they have found that entity, which is one of the things I object to. So what is a better thing to use? I'm not here to make a value judgment about what's better to use. I'm not saying religion is not something people can build a worldview around. I'm saying that it is not necessarily true for any one person that is the only thing that they can build their life around. You can be agnostic, yes. So is religion overall bad? No. There are quite a few things about it that I think are god-awful bad, to coin a phrase, that are absolutely horrible. And we'll get into some of those because we're going to see some of them demonstrated in this video. But I don't think religion is always and in all possible methods bad. I think that the video we're looking at here, I think this particular guy is definitely not making any good points. And we'll get to what that says about religion generally. But I'm not going to say all religion is bad all the time in no matter what way you choose to apply it.
Because in Psalms chapter 14, verse 1, it says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God.
So, like we said, all he's doing there is quoting literally a verse from a song written in a book that he has no evidence is actually true. So why promote atheists? I'm not promoting atheists. I am poking holes in the statements this guy is making. There's a difference between saying atheism is right and saying this guy is not making good points. By the way, I do actually think that atheism has some advantages over religious belief. But I'm not going to tell anybody they're not allowed to have religious belief unless that religious belief involves something like committing genocide, in which case, no, you're not allowed to do that. That's not cool. Not because it's religion, but because it's genocide.
So in reality, even though the atheists...
Don't say in reality, dude. You have no evidence backing that up. You're quoting a song from a book that you didn't write, that was written hundreds or thousands of years ago by people you have no idea who they were. It's just a verse in a song. That's what a psalm is. Get over it. You don't get to say in reality.
They cover up a lot of what they argue that sounds kind of smart. In reality, it's actually very, very foolish. And
welcome, familiar. Trump 2024 is a valid concept if he loses in 2020, because people who can only be president twice. But, I mean, hey, if he loses in 2020 and wants to run again, he's welcome to. That's his right.
And dumb. And I'm going to give you 3 things, all right, that proves that atheism is actually very dumb.
Good luck with that, pal. Good luck with proving atheism is dumb. But let's hear what he has to say.
All right, the first thing that you might have...
you cannot be elected president 3 times. You can assume the office if a particular person dies ahead of you in the chain of command, but you cannot win election for the presidency 3 consecutive times. There's a difference between saying you can be and Congress would have to change the law to allow it. Right now, you cannot do that. And that's not a small change, familiar presence. That would be a major change, because it would extend the possible presidency term of any candidate by 50%. That's not a small change by any stretch of the imagination.
Difficulty with is, how can you believe in creationism when you never saw it?
Okay, I'm going to stop this video here. That first point is one of the things that I find infuriating about religious apologists. because the most common way you see that is they try to tell you that cosmologists are wrong about whatever model they have for the origins of the universe, because they say to the cosmologist, "Were you there?" I have never heard a religious person say to a creationist, "Were you there?" It would be a valid question to ask for the same reason it would be valid to ask a cosmologist, "Were you there?" But the follow-up question is very different, because the cosmologist can say, "No, but we have evidence that we can measure that gives us information about what happened at the time, so you don't have to be there, any more than you would have to be there. For example, if you saw a tire track, you didn't have to see the car go by to know that something made a tire imprint there. You can see the after effects, and this supports X, Y, or Z model." He will be leader for life only if he destroys the United States to do it, because the United States is not supposed to have kings or dictators. And you are bordering very highly on being trolly, so be careful how you proceed, because I am willing to do any kind of discussion done in good faith. But if you're just here to try to rile me up, I got to be honest with you, you're not going to have an easy time doing it, because most trolls that I have seen on Twitch are complete amateur hour compared to the stuff that I dealt with when I used to be a writer for Yahoo News. So if you are here to troll, and your trolling level is mediocre, you are going to find it is very hard for you to successfully anger me. I can just block or ban you very easily, and it won't even make me pause. Mel Simba, can I have the Discord? This channel does not have its own Discord yet. It will eventually, but I do not have a specific one set up for this channel yet. Well, let's get back to the video where this guy is about to dishonestly claim that religious people ask creationists if they have actually seen creation, and then we'll see where that leads.
You see, that's the first dumb thing that they say. So you don't have to get cornered by that. I never saw God creating the whole universe before, so I can't prove that there is a God. Well, what do they believe in creating the universe then? They believe in evolution.
Wrong. Evolution is not cosmology. It is not origin of the universe. It is a mechanism by which speciation happens, and changes in animals happen over time and over generations. Has nothing to do with the model of how the universe came to being. That is called cosmology, completely different area of study. So no, oh god, and I really paused this in a bad spot for that guy. He looks like he just ate a lemon. I'm sorry, dude, I may disagree with your points, but that face, okay.
The Big Bang, then you point your finger at them and you say, well, you never saw the Big Bang before either. So,
and now we're back to the follow-up question being, can we find any evidence that demonstrates, that these things did or did not happen? And the answer is yes, you can find evidence for different cosmological models, and you cannot find evidence that anybody spoke the universe into existence. Familiar Present says, at the end of the day, science can explain all the mechanisms that brought the universe into being, but cannot explain why those mechanisms exist. That is correct and completely irrelevant at the same time. A mechanism existing does not mean that mechanism needs a why. It just is there. You might as well say, why is gravity? It doesn't have a why. The formula of gravitic acceleration being 32 meters per second squared at sea level. That's there without any motive behind it. It just happens to be the physics of the way gravity works on this planet at sea level, period, end of story. There's no, why is it that way? It's just that's how the pull between objects with mass works. So, it's a mistake to assume that there needs to be a why attached to the processes of things like physics and biology, etc. They are what they are. You don't have to attach a why or a motivation to them. They don't require that.
how can you believe in the Big Bang when you never saw it? How can you...
By looking at things like redshift and cosmological expansion and all the other kinds of evidence that astrophysicists can track, which this guy, I would bet real money, has never even seen a textbook dealing with, much less has any concept of the mathematics or evidentiary gathering methods that go along with it. So, yeah. Continuing.
believe that some kind of matter and chance happened together and created this whole universe? You believe that?
Thank you for the follow, Mel Simba. And as far as chance goes, no. Chance is something that you appeal to when you are not looking for actual reasons. Wow, this guy, every time I pause, I feel kind of bad for the way this guy looks on camera. I seem to catch him at the worst possible frame in these videos. Hello, Sour, welcome.
That happened when you never saw it? You see? That's the first dumb thing. The second dumb thing is...
No, the dumb thing is to say that you can equate or even compare as equals the idea of cosmology and the idea of creationism, because one has actual, measurable, verifiable evidence to support it, and the other has nothing of the sort.
I can't believe God exists until he shows up in front of me.
Okay. So this guy is about to try and tear down that premise, and I have heard this video before, but as you're hearing it, I want you to imagine for just a minute that he were trying to make these points about the word werewolf instead of about the word God. Just keep that in mind to help you understand why the argument he's making rings hollow. Historians have proved many events in the Bible are true, so what? The city of New York exists in Spider-Man comics. We can prove that it's there. It doesn't make Spider-Man real.
Now, there was a big debate with Sean Carroll and William Lane Craig, and supposedly...
William Lane Craig, by the way, is a Christian apologist, very famous. He argues in favor of Christian religion. He also, because he is apologist, does not deal with facts, reason, or science. He uses faith and scripture, which is not in the same realm as anything that can be verified scientifically.
That was the debate that all the atheists said, oh, he did a very good job. Well, Sean Carroll made that very dumb statement, which automatically showed that atheism is already foolish.
Okay, so again, substitute the word werewolf. If somebody were to come at you with books that talk about werewolves and movies that include werewolves and stories from ancient times that include werewolves, which, to use Familiar Presence's idea, included the names of actual cities or verified events, but were still about werewolves, would you be willing to believe in werewolves if somebody were not able to produce an actual werewolf in front of you? Anybody in the chat willing to, read a book on werewolves or watch a movie that has werewolves and have that story claim that werewolves are real and believe it without actually seeing a werewolf? Okay, Familiar Presence, you're saying you actually believe in werewolves. Is that correct? Because those movies and books do make those claims. Do you believe in werewolves because they have those books? Do you think werewolves are real? This ought to be a very interesting answer from Familiar Presence. I believe in werewolves because they are real. Okay, so with that, we can pretty much... I do have to ask one follow-up question. You say because they are real. How do you know? The answer to this question is going to determine whether or not you have a rational reason for saying what you did, or whether you're just trying to inject stupidity into the conversation, one of which will be followed up with discussion, and the other one of which will be followed up by banning you. So choose your next words very carefully, sir. Or ma'am, you might be a woman, I don't know. You've seen one, okay? And your evidence of that is, like, where have you seen it? How'd you document it? Where's the evidence? Let's hear it. Bring it up. Show it. Let's see this stuff. You heard of Twilight. Okay, so you're obviously just trolling. I'm going to let you stick around a while because it's instructive to the actual people who are here, like Mel Simba, who are here in good faith to see just what an idiotic troll looks like. So by all means, continue posting. I'll just be ignoring you from here on out, and at the end of the stream, I'll probably ban you. But yeah, you feel free to keep posting, and as long as you don't break terms of service, I'll let you keep making yourself look dumb. That's fine with me. So enjoy. Let's continue with the video. Me. I may have a lot of facial hair, but that doesn't make me a werewolf, dude.
Because here's the thing, is that he says, I can't believe God exists until he shows up in front of me. All right? You can't believe that a creator exists until he shows up in front of you.
No, I can't believe a creator exists until some reason for believing in a creator actually is presented. A personal appearance by someone who could demonstrate that they were the creator would definitely suffice for that. But I don't see why anybody would not see the reason for that, for wanting that kind of evidence. And if you were to ask this particular pastor if they think that Allah or Odin or any other religious tradition's creation story was true, I seriously doubt this person would accept it at face value and abandon their own beliefs and say, you know what? I'm going to believe this other thing now because I don't have to see it to believe it. There's a saying in the atheist community that says most people are atheists about every religion except one. We just go one God further.
Okay, well, I never saw the designer, the creator of my watch before.
True, but you have seen many other watches, and if you were to choose to do so, you could actually visit the factory in which it was created and observe that process yourself. You do not have to take it at face value. You can actually investigate it. It is what is called a falsifiable claim. It means you can test it for truth or falsehood. Can't do that with a deity. No way to test it. If there were, by all means, mention a way to test a deity that can be scientifically verified, and we'll have a whole discussion about that. But it's hard for me to believe that this guy is actually acting in good faith in this video, other than the fact that he probably, because he is religious, sincerely believes the things he's saying, regardless of whether or not they are logically sound or valid.
So until I see the creator of my watch, then I'm going to believe he exists? Oh, I live in this room right here, until I see the creator of this room.
Same thing. You could go to your town hall, you could look up the plans, you could find out who built it, you could actually meet the person or people who built the structure in which you are currently standing. You might even be able to find video they made of the construction process. There are going to be ways you can investigate that. Again, no way that I am aware of to investigate the existence of a deity. No way that has ever been presented by anyone of actually investigating whether or not there's a deity.
And until he shows up in front of me, then I'll believe he exists. Oh, until I see the creator of my Honda Civic car, then I'll believe that he exists.
You can actually go on tours of Honda production facilities. They actually have that as a tourist attraction because they love when Westerners come around and see how hard the people there work and how high the quality standards they adhere to are. That's actually a thing you can do, just so you know. Yeah. By the way, I'm not hearing anything else out of you, Familiar Presence. Have you decided to not make yourself look dumb, or are you just thinking really hard about what the next silly thing you're going to say is? Because I'm eager to know. All right, let's continue.
Oh, until I see... You see how foolish and dumb that argument is?
No. You see how foolish and dumb your claims about believing things you can't see or verify are? That's a whole other argument. Okay. It's not fair you're debating someone who can't respond. I'm not debating anybody. I'm commenting on a video. The person I am debating right now at the moment is you, and you can respond. So, yeah. But he's already made his point. I am responding to it.
All right? It's natural and common sense to think that when there are created things here, complicated designs, it demands a creator.
Okay, that's called the teleological argument. It says that complex things must have a creator, and it immediately falls apart when you realize that if something has to be created by something else that is more complex than it is, then you have an infinitely complex thing in the concept of a god, which would mean that by your own argument, God himself would need a creator, but no religious person is willing to admit their God was created by anybody, ergo their entire argument falls apart there. You can look it up all over the place. You can look up the watchmaker argument online. You can look up teleological argument online. It will explain in much greater detail than I'm going to go into now just how bad the logic is there. But it does not work. It holds no water. But let's hear what else he has to say, because I'm sure he's going to go on and on about it.
A designer.
I'm not asking him anything. I'm just responding to the stuff that he's doing. But, I can understand based on you making claims like having seen werewolves that you might struggle with understanding this stuff from there. Are you sure you want to keep talking? Because I'll be glad to ridicule you for being a troll since you demonstrated you were not here in good faith. I am totally willing to discuss things with you in good faith, but you've made it very clear you're not interested in that.
You don't need to see that, all right? The third dumb thing is, how can an all good God exist when he lets all these bad things happen?
Okay. So this guy is going to make the most asinine claim imaginable about this, and I'm going to let you watch it yourself before I actually explain why it's stupid. But let's hear him actually make the stupid mistake, and then I'll explain it.
You see. So that's the third dumb thing they said, because they automatically prove there is a God. You might say, how? Okay, here's how you can get them. Okay, they said this: how can an all good God exist when, here's their giveaway, he lets all these bad things happen? See, this part they don't believe he exists, but this part they said he exists. Okay,
so here's why that's stupid, is because the phrase, how can an all good God exist when he lets all these things happen, is called a hypothetical. Okay, it is the same premise you use when you say, just for purposes of argument, let's say blah, and then you ask a question having assumed another thing just for purposes of discussion. When an atheist says, how can an all good God exist when he lets all these things happen, he is not saying a God actually exists. He's saying, how can you believe that there's some all-good entity out there if one of the characteristics of this entity is that that entity lets all this horrific stuff happen? The atheist is not acknowledging the existence of a God. This is an entirely hypothetical thing. His whole third point is garbage. I did believe in God before you started, but you ripped this guy so hard I'm coming around. I seriously doubt that. Honestly, at this point, Familiar, I don't take anything you say as being honest. You kind of sabotaged yourself in that regard. So, whatever, dude.
So here's the thing, okay? How can you get upset and bitter and frustrated and criticize about a God who lets all these bad things happen when he doesn't even exist? You see, then? You can't criticize. You can't get upset at someone.
Okay, so just so that you know, he is trying to drop the N-word here. We're just going to ban him. So, yeah, you don't get to try to drop the N-word in my channel. The auto mod is smarter than you are, and based on what we're seeing here, Familiar Presence, I would imagine my dog is probably smarter than you about a lot of things. But hey, I mean, good try. If you're gonna try to beat the auto mod, you can give it your best shot. But it's I've got several of them running on it because I, unlike you, am not an idiot. I know that there are people out there who will try to interrupt this and will try to say bad things on stream, whatever. I've been in this game a long time. I've been doing news and op-ed and this kind of thing for more than a decade now. I've run into people who, as I told you before, were much better trolls than you are, and I put an end to their stuff, and you are not up to the game. So have a nice day. Yeah, you can follow all you want, but you're banned. You're not going to be talking anymore in the stream, and anybody who shows up that appears to be one of your alts is going to get banned immediately anyway. So, yeah. But you give it your best shot there, bud. You try to troll as much as you want. You can live under a bridge and ask people 3 questions before they can cross it and, hang out in your mom's basement or whatever it is that you do. But you're not going to be very successful here. Let's get back to the video.
One who doesn't even exist if you don't believe he exists. You see, that's foolish. Just because he lets these bad things to happen, that just automatically showed that there is a God then. You see that?
No, it didn't. And even if, here's the really dumb part about this, even if he were right that an atheist was acknowledging that they believed a God exists by using that language, which they're not, but even if they were, it still wouldn't mean a God is actually there, any more than it would mean Thor was there if the person in question had been talking about Norse characters. Nothing this guy has had to offer holds any weight.
You see? See, that was a trick question. An all good God. You see that? An all good God exists. That's why they word it that way. If they say, how can God exist? then they already gave it away. You see, that's a dumb statement, right?
This guy is really digging his own grave with the comments in the video. He just doesn't understand that the points he's trying to make there don't hold any water. But since he seems to be focusing on the all good part, let's talk about that. There is a wonderful show you can see on YouTube every Sunday called The Atheist Experience, and there are some really great hosts on it. The hosts vary week to week. But one of the hosts is a woman whose name is escaping me right now for some reason. But she made an excellent point when talking about the idea that God is all good. And the example she used is, if a child is being abused by an adult, like, you know, the pedophile way, if she had all the power in the universe, she would handle things very differently than the way the Christian God does. Because this was on a call where a Christian had come in to argue this point. And she points out quite accurately that if you believe what Christian scripture says, the behavior of the Christian God would be to let the abuse happen while watching at the keyhole and making sure that he knew exactly what had been done, and then punishing the guy later after the crime had been committed. Whereas, her name is Tracy Harris, that's the woman's name. Tracy's thought was, if she had all the power in the world, she would make sure the assault never happened. Okay? That the person did not have to suffer, instead of waiting and watching while the person suffered and then saying, now I'll do something about it. So, you know, if he wants to harp on whether or not in this video that the God he worships is all good, kind of hard to back up the idea of all good when the crime and punishment part of the Christian scripture says that they wait until all the horrible stuff has happened and then react to it, instead of using the infinite power of whatever divinity they claim this entity has to not let people suffer in the first place.
There. So that's why the Bible says at the book of Romans 1 that atheism is truly dumb and stupid.
And again, who cares what that book says if you can't prove any of it's true, any more than I wouldn't take it seriously if I saw a book that said all Christians are idiots, because that's not true, just because it might be in a book someplace. In order for you to take the book seriously, you have to demonstrate the book is true. So I don't really care what his book says about atheists, because he can't demonstrate the validity of it.
The Bible says at Romans chapter 1, verse 20, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse.
Whatever, dude. Until you can prove that's actually true, who cares?
Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened.
Okay, you want to talk about vanity? What could possibly be more vain than basically name-dropping the most powerful being in the universe and claiming that being has a personal vested interest in you? You're so important to them that they care about you. They're so far above you that they are, like, comparing you to them is more abstract than comparing you to a single-celled animal living on your skin. And yet they care about that one guy. That guy's so special that the big guy cares about him. You know, that's vanity right there.
Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. So the Bible showed you why atheism is already dumb, all right?
Except that, again, doesn't matter what the Bible says if you can't prove it's true.
These three statements are very, very dumb, all right? It's just common sense to believe when you see the complications of how this universe and how this whole world is designed.
Okay, now he's committing what's called the argument from ignorance. It amounts to, I don't understand how X could be possible, therefore God. Doesn't work any more than I don't understand how X could be possible, therefore Allah, or I don't understand how these presents got here, therefore Santa, or I don't understand how this quarter got under my pillow when there was a tooth there last night, ergo Tooth Fairy. None of it works. If you are arguing from ignorance, it is not useful. It does not prove anything.
And made, it actually demands a being who is very, very intelligent to design and make all these.
And then we're going back to the argument about how complex things need a creator, and then you get back to the regression of, okay, then what created God, which this guy is not going to even attempt to answer because religious people seem not to be able to grasp that logical fallacy.
complications and living things to keep on going and to exist. You see, a complicated creation demands a very complicated and very brilliant creator.
And how many times do you think he said that same basic thing throughout this? Is that the third or the fourth? I forget.
Truly, atheism is dumb and foolish. These three things are just very dumb arguments.
If he means the three arguments he presented are dumb, then I agree with him entirely. If he means the things that we said here as a response to it, then no. So, yep. Anyway, the reason I bring this whole video up is it gets very tiresome as an atheist who just wants to be left alone to hear people telling me that I'm dumb for the reasons like the ones that guy in that video presented, because it happens all too frequently, and it gets irritating. You know, this guy obviously has no idea what he's talking about. He has no concept of logic. He has no concept of critical thinking. He has no concept of how to reason his way through a point. He does not understand the logical fallacies he's committing, like completely out of touch with reality in regards to the points he's trying to make, and yet he has the colossal gall to say that it's someone like me who's acting foolishly. And that is a very commonly held belief among the faithful, and that's why it gets very frustrating, because if they would just leave me the hell alone and not publicly make stuff like this, you know, and try to shovel it at people like me, or try to convince their friends that people like me are dumb or whatever, I wouldn't care. But they seem not to be able to live and let live, and that is the whole reason why people like me will look at videos like this and point out what the flaws are in them. So now I'm going to open it up to anybody who's in chat, except for the familiar presence person who decided to try and drop the N-bomb several times and wasn't here in good faith and kind of makes me laugh at how silly he is. If anybody else has any questions about that, that's cool. And then I think if I have this open, I will show you. When I said earlier that you know, people like him are a real amateur hour when it comes to trolls, I actually have a file that I saved from back in my Yahoo News days, where I copied and pasted some of the most amusing, stupid comments that I got on my articles to a file. So we'll look at some stuff people had to say so you can understand why this guy's junk doesn't bother me in the least. Let's see if I have that file open. Oh, I do. So let's take a look. I actually published this on Yahoo News because I wanted to ridicule the people who were writing such bad stuff. And the stuff that you see here is actually as they sent it, including all their spelling mistakes and grammar errors and what else. Yeah, I actually said in my Yahoo author's profile at the time that if you're going to insult me, I'm okay with that, just to at least try to use proper English when you do it, and that seemed to be beyond the capability of a lot of these people. So, yeah. Let's see. Accusing people like me of causing Yahoo's shareholders to be upset. My all-time favorite, suck my one-eyed trouser Jesus. That was amusing. I thought that was one of the more ridiculous things I'd ever seen, but that's actually something somebody said. I want to marry Lassie. Somebody just throwing that in there for no apparent reason. How did this ugly, religious bigot ever get hired? Calling me a dirtbag. You wouldn't pee on me to put me out if I was on fire. Ignorant and bias. Can't even say biased. Can't capitalize their own sentences. The auteur of this piece of trash is just that. Let's see. Narrow-minded articles I have ever ridden. Not read. Ridden. R-I-D-D-E-N. Where the hell did that come from? Let's see. Calling me a clown. That's fine. You're allowed to think I'm a clown. I should never write articles. Come on, Yahoo, fire this bozo. Oh, that was good stuff. Somebody who actually followed me at that point. When I saw the title of the article, I figured it was you wrote it. Obviously, somebody who knew my work and was able to had read so much of it that he was able to recognize my tone and style when he saw the headline, which is amusing because when I worked for Yahoo, my articles got in aggregate over 2 million page reads during that time. So yeah, people knew about this stuff. So yeah, it was amusing. I got a lot of really funny comments from a lot of really silly people at that point, and bothered me not in the least. I kept them for the hilarity value, and that's why I am not really bothered by these people showing up. What else we got here? I already talked about the Supreme Court stuff. We already did the online quiz. What else? Oh, I have a whole page here dedicated to debunking the watchmaker argument, which the other guy was talking about. So if you want to read about it, do Google the watchmaker argument, and you'll find pages like this that explain the logical flaws in that. But yeah, in the end, here's the thing. Religion is not good or bad in and of itself. I think that some aspects of religion are harmful. Like convincing people to believe things that have no evidence to support them. I think that's inherently a harmful thing. But generally speaking, most religious people I know are kind and decent people. They don't, act like jerks. They're not mean-spirited. And they're not pushy. They're not awful. But the people that tend to be the pushiest really, really go over the top with it. And that's one of my objections to it. But I don't think religion is something that should be eliminated from the world. I don't think that religious people are inherently bad. I just would really like a live and let live agreement between people who have faith and people like me who don't. And that's what it comes down to. So I will hope in the long term that people who have a religious faith will accept that not everybody has to share it, not everybody has to believe what they do, and that it's not okay to bash people who don't believe the same way they do because of that fact. And when that happens, they'll never hear another peep out of me about it. So, yeah. Anyway, I've been blabbering on now for about an hour and a half, and I think I'm going to wrap up so that I can do a little family time stuff. But I'll be back again on Monday with gaming on my regular channel and more politics here. I expect by Monday we'll have a lot to talk about the impeachment process, because the ongoing drama of that seems to be coming to a crescendo. And we'll see what happens between now and then. Anyway, have a good night, everybody. Thank you for those who came by, and I will see you again on another episode. You take care.